Hi, I'm Ian Linklip, the Consumer Insider. For 25 years, I've been helping consumers with their credit and debt issues, and today I want to talk to you about whether filing bankruptcy is a good alternative to some of the other tools that we have for fixing an identity theft. Now, we've seen this before in my office. We've seen people come in presenting facts where they have filed for bankruptcy to correct an identity theft, and they're coming to us because they're having some of those same kinds of issues before. And some of these people have come in after having used attorneys to file for those bankruptcies or to help them try and fix credit reporting issues, and only to find that they've got those same kinds of problems coming back again and again on their credit reports. The short of this is that bankruptcy is really the wrong tool for this kind of a problem. And I want to talk to you about some of the reasons why it is the wrong tool and give you some things to think about before you decide to use bankruptcy as a way of fixing an identity theft or credit reporting problem. So here's the executive summary of this. If you use bankruptcy to correct an identity theft or a credit reporting problem, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to lose all of your savings, all your investments, anything that you worked to build up over the years of any value. That all goes into the bankruptcy estate, and you will lose that, and that's gone and will be used to pay your creditors, which may include, in fact, the people who are trying to enforce a bankruptcy account. In the short term, it may fix with some of the credit reporting and debt collection errors, but it's not a long-term fix, as we've seen in our office, because these items definitely can come back over and over again if you don't use the right legal solutions to fix the problem. Next, it can be a black ball to some employment opportunities, and most importantly, it really will not fix the underlying problem of an identity theft, which is really arises because of the data that is out there and what people are saying about you and what they're doing to you based on the data that they're getting. So it's not the right tool, and it's going to have some long-lasting effects. There are going to be costs that you want to think about. So let's dive in just a little bit deeper here. To start with, we all know how bad an identity theft can be. Ultimately, identity thefts are going to result in items coming onto your credit report. You're going to see calls from creditors who think that you owe money that you don't. There may be debt collectors who get that debt and are trying to enforce it on behalf of those creditors, and they start calling you and writing you letters and issuing you threatening letters and sometimes even suing you to collect on these fraudulent accounts. You may be getting robocalls, text messages. There are all kinds of bad ramifications from an identity theft, and certainly if you are a victim, you definitely need to have this problem corrected. But it is not the end of the world, and there are definitely really easy to find tools to fix this. And federal law is provided for these, and we've got access to a lot of these tools in our office, and many of the resources are available for free on our website if you want to try and start doing this yourself. So let's start with the core problem here, which is when your identity is stolen, you wind up with a creditor who has got data that says that you owe that creditor money. Now, that data may be associated with a falsified address because an identity thief has set up a mail drop. It may be identified with your actual personal identifiers, your true address, your true social security number and birth date. But the core of this is that there is data telling someone that you owe them money. And based on that data, they are going to then start taking actions to get you to pay that money, which include things like the credit reporting, sending letters, putting your name into an auto dialer. All of these things can happen. And if they are not successful in collecting that money, they're going to take that data set and they're going to sell that data set to a debt collector. And they're going to do the same thing. And if they're unsuccessful in collecting, they're going to sell that again and again and again downstream. And that data will continue to live in the creditors' databases, and every debt collector that they've transferred that information to, that data about the identity theft is going to live in all of those computer systems, and it will continue to generate more activity down the road as people continue to try to enforce this information, this debt against you as the victim. Now, the core problem here is that this false data is harming you, and what you have to do in order to fix this is to reach out, grab that data, and make sure that that data doesn't go any further than it's going, and that anybody who's got that data does not act on that data, which means you really need to get your arms around all of these people in a legal format and convince them that they need to stop doing what they're doing that's going to harm you. And ultimately, the false data that you're going to see appearing and popping up all over the place are things like false identification, false addresses, false dates of birth, false social security numbers, false account activity, false collection, and false inquiries on your credit report. All this can spell out to a depressed credit score and derogatory credit information that can be relied on by people even apart from the credit score. So if you're defaulting on debts, future employers who are looking at hiring you can see this and may find that you're a bad risk. If you are applying for work in the financial services area, or if you're looking for a security clearance, the fact that you have outstanding debts, that can also be out there and harm you in your efforts to get a job or another job opportunity. So at core, you need to stop this data from appearing and harming you off into the future. Now, what does bankruptcy do? So bankruptcy is a legal device. It arises under federal law, and what it does is it allows you as an individual who owes money to reach out and grab all of your creditors and bring them into a legal proceeding where you can have a conversation about dividing up the assets that you have and paying off what you can of those debts. That means that the court's going to grab all those creditors and debt collectors, bring them all to one place, and they're also going to reach out and grab all the assets that you have available to pay those people and use those assets to pay those creditors. That would include the people who are holding false and fraudulent accounts arising from an identity theft. So just stop and think about that for a minute. What that means is that you're going to do the equivalent of committing a financial suicide, and you're going to give the money that you have to the people who you don't owe money to get away from this identity theft problem. So that, in the first instance, I think is fundamentally a bad idea if there are better alternatives available. Second, it's going to prevent creditors from coming to you and asking you to pay debts after you've had that bankruptcy. So that's going to provide you some measure of relief. It's also going to stop the threatening calls and threats of lawsuits. In the short term, this is all going to work to put the brakes on an identity theft, but in the long term, it's going to create some very serious problems in addition to taking away all the assets that you have. You'll lose all your money. You will lose all of your good credit, the benefit of all your good credit, because all of your creditors, including the ones who you have, who you've been paying for years, they're coming into that bankruptcy too, and they're not going to report you as having discharged that debt in bankruptcy. Those are black marks on your credit report. After you have filed that bankruptcy, you may see a number of debt collectors popping up trying to collect the fraudulent accounts that you've discharged, and that's because that data is still out there floating around. Now, under the bankruptcy code, that's illegal, but we see this happening all the time. Those accounts are being transferred out even after a bankruptcy, and debt collectors are coming in and trying to collect those identity theft accounts against the victim, even though they may have discharged them in a bankruptcy proceeding. So with that in mind, you may not be accomplishing the thing that you want to do with the bankruptcy. More importantly, for a period of 10 years following that bankruptcy can remain on your credit report as an item that people can look at and see. So if you are being reviewed for a mortgage or a loan or credit, even though the credit score may rebound in some time afterwards, that item is still there for everybody to see that you filed for bankruptcy, and they can use that against you in determining whether to give you credit or not. Additionally, you will find that if you are being reviewed for a security clearance or for financial services, again, those opportunities may not be available for you because of the fact that you have filed for a bankruptcy. So ultimately, what this means is that if you consider using bankruptcy as a tool to remedy an identity theft, you are going to give up an awful lot to try and remedy a problem right now. It may not actually even do the thing that you want to, and you're going to give up your credit score, you're going to give up your money and your assets, and you may be right back where you started at the beginning. And that's not where we want to see any of our clients. when they come into our office. So ultimately, we have other tools to fix an identity theft. Some of these tools are for free and they're self-help, again, available on our website for free. And some of them may take a little bit more skill and you may need an attorney to help you. But on the bright side, there's many attorneys who will accept identity theft cases on a contingency basis, which means that as a consumer of the legal service, you wouldn't have to go out and reach into your pocket and pay somebody an hourly rate to get that. Secondly, identity theft cases, believe it or not, can be very significant in terms of the amounts of recoveries that we can get for clients who've been harmed by these things. So if you choose to go for a bankruptcy instead of filing an affirmative lawsuit, you're talking about giving up everything you own to fix this, whereas the people who are harming you may actually be required to pay you compensation for the harm that they've done. So again, on the balance, usually not a really good solution for anything. So the tools that we principally would use to fix an identity theft would be, first, we would dispute this information with the credit reporting agencies using an identity theft affidavit. We would also dispute these directly to creditors and any debt collectors who are trying to collect it. And if that was not successful in getting it resolved, we would bring a lawsuit on behalf of the consumer to get what's called a declaration. And a declaration is a legal order that says you don't owe money. And this is a very common procedure. It's very common in certain other kinds of legal issues, but we can use that tool for consumers to get a ruling that they do not owe the money that they never borrowed and never received and benefited from. And then the next thing that we would do is we bring claims under the Fair Credit Reporting Act to seek compensation for the false credit reporting and damage to the credit report that's done as a result of the identity theft. So if you are considering filing for a bankruptcy in order to correct an identity theft issue, you want to consider these things very carefully, whether or not you want to give up your assets, whether you want to give up your good credit, whether you want to be exposed to denial of job opportunities, and whether or not this is going to actually help you in the long run, and whether you've been the victim of even more harm at the hands of the banks and the finance companies who continue to push this item onto your credit report even after you've disputed it. So those are the things that you want to think about before you reach out and file for bankruptcy. And if you're consulting with an attorney, you want to discuss these things with the attorney that you're visiting with. So that's it for today. I'm the Consumer Insider, Ian Linclip. Thanks for visiting and spending some time with us today. You can visit us at consumerlawyers.com. My Twitter handle is MIConsumerLaw, and we also have a Facebook group, which is the Michigan Consumer Law Center. You can see our other videos about credit and credit reporting on this channel. And if you like today's video, hit the like button down at the bottom and pay this forward. If you know somebody who could benefit from this information, share it with them and hit the subscribe button. And if you have questions about credit or these videos, feel free to send us an email at info@consumerlawyers.com. Thanks for visiting with us today.